But recently there have been cutbacks on this week. That new gastric band for Michael has been put on hold. Diane's wardrobe mistress has gone to work for Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Very fitting, I would say. My supply of happy pills, which are vital in oiling the wheels of political discourse between these two, has been cut to a mere 8 packs a show. No matter, we sally forth regardless, laughing in the face of the threat of cuts. But as we're in the mood for tailoring our budget, we asked the Guardian's Jonathan Freeland to saunter down to Savile Row to see how Parliament's been measuring up in a busy week for politics.
Of course, times are hard, but there's no treat quite so lovely as a bespoke suit. It'll last too, which is why you should think of it as an investment. Much better than cutting your coat to suit your cloth. That's the argument Gordon Brown's been trying to make too. Investment versus cuts. You can see why. It's his comfort zone. The trouble is the voters know there's not much money about, so they might just not buy it.
The whole country will conclude that he's taking them for fools. Everyone knows what matters is spending over and above inflation. So let me ask him again. Will he now accept that his spending plans from 2011 mean a real terms cut?
So we are increasing current expenditure and increasing capital expenditure up to the Olympics. The unfortunate thing is his proposal is to cut expenditure by 10%.
Immaculately turned out for his Mansion House speech, the man who was so nearly the ex-chancellor gave a rather more candid hint that he might well have to get out the scissors and cut.
Given the uncertainties which still lie ahead, I think it would be a mistake to try now to set in stone detailed spending plans for individual government departments 5 years ahead.
You might have thought Alistair Darling would have been weakened by his near demotion this month. But having proved he's unsackable, he now has the chance to cut a stronger, more independent figure. But not that independent. He's still sticking with the Prime Minister, defending the status quo against an attempt by the Governor of the Bank of England to take more power. The Governor says he's tired of looking like a vicar whose congregation ignores his sermons.
Warnings are unlikely to be effective when people are being asked to change behaviour which seems to them highly profitable. So it's not entirely clear how the bank will be able to discharge its new statutory responsibility if we can do no more than issue sermons or organise burials.
Gordon Brown must have wished he could have donned his invisibility cloak when he stepped forward to announce the long-awaited inquiry into the Iraq War. Immediately, he was bombarded with criticism for saying it would take evidence in private. Stitch up, they cried, the doubters led by a distinguished man in ermine.
So I reluctantly conclude that the form of the inquiry proposed by the government has been dictated more by the government's political interest than the national interest, and it cannot achieve the purpose of purging mistrust which so many people hope from it.
The government hastily announced it would allow the inquiry to take at least some evidence in public. What brought about the change? Not Tory pressure, Labour are used to that. It was the criticism from the mandarins and the military brass that they couldn't take. My inside leg measurement? Shh, that's classified. It seems like black is the new black, at least if MP's expenses claims are anything to go by. They were finally released officially after a long freedom of information battle. But it was hardly worth the wait. All the juicy bits had been blacked out on security grounds. That's bound to make an already irate public even angrier. What's amazing is that if it hadn't been for the Telegraph and those full, uncensored claims, MPs like Kitty Ussher, who resigned as Treasury Minister amid reports that she'd changed the designation of her constituency home to avoid capital gains tax, would still be in their jobs. A full-dress occasion for Michael Martin this week as he bade his farewells. MPs went into deep hypocrisy mode as they lavished praise on the man they had dumped, but he did not return the compliment. Instead, he went out insisting that everyone was to blame except him. He was furious that MPs had had the chance to change the expenses system last year and had blown it.
I wish with all my heart that those recommendations had won the confidence of the House last July. And I wish that party leaders would have shown then some of the leadership which they have shown now.
Given the crisis in public confidence now afflicting Parliament, the choice of a new Speaker could not be more important. Voters are looking for a serious candidate bent on serious reform. But MPs seem to be playing the usual games, with Labour backing John Bercow, the Tory other Tories hate, while many Tories are backing Labour's Margaret Beckett. Gordon Brown survived last week's attempted coup, only to be reminded how perilous his position is. Polls show voters don't trust him on public spending, people were enraged over Iraq, and the expenses headache just won't go away. As for the new Speaker, whoever it is, they're going to have their work cut out for them. Not what I was expecting, but I like it.
Jonathan Freeland looking very fetching, I would say. Diane, the outgoing Speaker, he had a point, didn't he, that MPs and ministers have consistently dragged their feet over expenses.
He did have a point. I mean, Michael Martin has been scapegoated about something which other people knew all about and could have done more.
Yeah, even though he himself was complicit, he was not the only roadblock to reform.
He wasn't a lone gunman, let's put it like that.
All right. When you see, you're outside Parliament now, Michael, and you see all the people who are now putting their names forward to be Speaker. When you look at it from the outside, they look like a kind of ancient political elite, separate from the country. Do you think?
That's entirely right. You and I were on a special programme the night that the Speaker resigned, which was only 3 weeks ago, and we had this feeling that there was a sort of constitutional revolution, that the next Speaker was going to be a completely different kind of person, and that the next Speaker would have a completely different sort of role, would be a real leader of the House of Commons. And here we are 3 weeks later, we have no feeling that anything is going to change, or that the new person is going to be any different.
I'm a Bercow supporter, and let me make a small
You are, John Bercow.
I am indeed.
The Tory.
He's the one that looks least like the old guard in more ways than one. And let me make a small public service announcement for those of my colleagues thinking of voting for Margaret Beckett. The Tories in the first and second rounds will vote for Margaret Beckett to keep her in the race and knock out John Bercow. Then when you get to the final round, they will switch their vote to Sir George Young. So the message is vote Beckett, get Young. People can't say they weren't warned.
Right, but you see...
Now, the very fact that Diane says all that, which is true...
I think you've just preempted my question.
Will be a huge disappointment to listeners who think that MPs are voting for the person who's going to be the best Speaker.
I mean, the point, we had an email on the Daily Politics today which brought it out. Someone emailed us, a number made the point. Are you really are Labour going to choose the Speaker on the basis you vote for Bercow because he's a Tory and the Tories don't like him, and the Tories will vote for Margaret Beckett because Labour doesn't want Margaret Beckett? I mean, people in this crisis of Parliament, people want you, MPs, to choose the best person, not play stupid party games.
I genuinely think that of all of them. I mean, you know, Sir George Young and the rest of it, Bercow is the only one that's genuinely interested in reform. And he's a backbencher. What backbenchers want is someone that will stick up for backbenchers.
Do you buy that, Michael?
To some extent, I do. I think John Bercow is, in many ways, has certain eccentricities, but he probably is the one who's most interested in reform. I don't think, reading the form book, that he stands much of a chance.
Oh, you don't? Who do you think will win?
My guess right now...
Hard to tell, but who do you think?
My guess right now would be that Margaret Beckett would win.
Diane, who do you think?
Well, she's been put in the race by the Labour whips, and she could win if people...
So the Labour whips are now backing
Oh, yeah, she's...
And a number of Tories are now backing Beckett to stop Bercow.
Exactly, that's what's going on.
OK, well, we'll see. We'll know by this time next week. On expenses, as we saw, again, on the show today, we're holding up these so-called redacted expenditure. We've got one sheet from Anthony Steen and one from George Osborne, which is just totally black. It's just black. I mean, in a way, it had been better not to have published anything than have published this.
Yes. I think today is going to have another powerful impact. I mean, it's not just we've shown our faces blacked out. Channel 4 News today had Jon Snow blacked out. You know, this is but you know, we've always had this feeling about censorship, haven't we? We were very shocked in other countries, in other regimes, where newspapers appeared with great holes in them. So this idea of information being blacked out is a very, very powerful one. And the examples of what we wouldn't know are very telling. You know, we wouldn't know about the duck houses. We wouldn't know
about the flipping.
We wouldn't know about the capital gains dodgers and so on. It's very, very telling, and it's another massive own goal for Parliament.
Fact is, if we had left it to Parliament, none of the major scandals would not have been revealed. It took a free press, getting a leaked document, getting a great scoop.
A free press and a criminal act.
Telling the British people.
A free press, a criminal act.
Well, you say it's criminal act.
All right, a free press, criminal act, and old-fashioned journalistic skills. Yeah. This is not a story you could have broken online. It took dozens of journalists working really hard.
With huge resources.
And resources and doing real research.
So it is a vindication of what the Telegraph did?
I hate to say it, so I won't say it.
I'll take that as a yes. Michael?
And other newspapers will be very upset that they didn't buy it.
They are upset.
Well, some of them turned it...
down.
Do you let me ask you this, because there was a story today that David Cameron's going to pay back almost £1,000. And of course we have the story broke today also that Fred Goodwin, Fred the Shred from Royal Bank of Scotland, is going to pay back a chunk of his pension as well. Do you think, because I don't, which is why I'm asking you, do you think these paybacks cut any ice with the public?
No, because everyone knows that if you were some poor woman on benefits who'd been fiddling your benefits and offered to pay you back, you would still go to jail. But I would say we've paid back MPs now £500,000.
Really? That's the total?
Total.
I thought it was very striking on Question Time, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, when Ming Campbell, who is National Treasurer, was arguing that he'd done nothing wrong but paid money back, and he was being jeered.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to argue you've done nothing wrong when you're paying money back. Margaret Beckett, on the other hand, said, I've done nothing wrong and I'm not paying anything back. She was jeered too, but you kind of felt that her position was stronger.
It's at least logical, if not moral. Iraq, the inquiry.
Yeah.
Is there any point to this inquiry?
Oh, this is so pathetic. No, really, I'm someone that wants to support my Prime Minister right up until the next general election, but he makes it very hard. I mean, I imagine this is meant as a sop to people like me who are opposed to the war. But who told Gordon we wanted inquiry? I mean, look at Chilcot. Chilcot was on the original.
He's the chairman.
Chilcot, yeah.
Very much a Whitehall establishment figure.
Yeah, full of people, the inquiry, stuff full of people, who are... not rock the boat people. They're not giving evidence under oath. They can say what they like. It's secret. It's worthless. Why didn't Gordon talk?
And by the way, this inquiry could have been announced at any time in the last several years. It was, in fact, announced so as to coincide with the hustings that were being held amongst the candidates for Speaker. So the hustings were very poorly attended by members of Parliament. That's rather emphasising the point that the timing of Parliament is organised not by Parliament but by the government.
By the government.
And actually, had he announced this when he first took over, with a whole flourish?
That would have been a fresh broom.
But it takes no courage at all to announce an inquiry when the American president is anti-war.
I mean, you say it's going to be in private, but the impression I get is that the government's position is changing so rapidly that by the weekend, the whole thing could be in public.
They've had to concede on that. When you've got the army and civil servants saying, make it public, what can you do?
So when you look at Mr. Brown, it's another fine mess, in a sense.
It is, and so completely predictable. And of course, as usual, he did not take the other parties into his confidence. He didn't.
And it should have been an all-party inquiry.
Yeah, Margaret Thatcher, when there had to be an inquiry into the Falklands, into the Belgrano and so on. No, into the Falklands, wasn't it?
He didn't talk to the other party. He didn't talk.
She got an all-party agreement.
He didn't talk to his own MPs.